Throughout 2020, I've been absolutely delighted to share with you some of my favourite walks in the Yorkshire Dales. In this first series of Walking the Dales, over 6 great walks, we've seen some breathtaking sights and we've uncovered some wonderful stories. But now it's time for us to spread our wings and fly a little further, because Yorkshire has so much more to offer. Beyond the Yorkshire Dales lies this, the North York Moors National Park. This is the landscape that I used to walk through when I was a lad. Has it changed much in the last 35 years? I've got absolutely no idea. So shall we find out as we go walking the moors? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Codbeck Reservoir on the northwestern edge of the North York Moors National Park. Now, this is a landscape that my family has been walking through and coming to for 3 generations. And to this day, it's one of our favourite places to come for a visit. Whatever the weather, Codbeck has always got something for you because it's surrounded by fir trees. So it keeps you cool on a hot summer day and it keeps you relatively dry on a rainy day in the autumn and winter. It's perfect for picnics, but also it's wonderful for walks, and it's absolutely littered with hundreds of paths, some of which have been here for hundreds of years. And it's no surprise really, because on the right day, some of the wildlife that you'll see up here is absolutely stunning. But it's also the views that every so often really take your breath away. We've climbed up quite high on our journey up here to the North York Moors National Park. And so every so often, when you catch it just right, some of the things that you'll see really do take your breath away. Just take a look at this. I told you it was gorgeous, didn't I? What makes this place extra special for me is every Christmas, my family had a tradition. On Boxing Day, we would normally go for a walk, and it was to here that we normally came. Now, when I walk this route, I'm constantly reminded of places where we've stopped for a picnic, or we've climbed a tree, or maybe played hide and seek. And I suppose then it goes without saying that as I grew up and I had my own family, it was to here, to this wonderful place, that I was drawn. And then I think it was about 2 years ago that my mum dropped a bombshell. She told me that she'd been coming here since it opened in 1953. Her mum and dad, my gran and grandpa, and here they are, we've got a picture to prove it, their visit in 1953 or 1954. She can't remember when this photo was taken, but there's my Grandpa Len, my grandma Dorothy, and their dog Angus, you can see at the bottom of the picture, and they're stood on the banks of Codbeck Reservoir, which is just over there. We're going to get to it later on in today's walk. So do you fancy joining me for an explore of this wonderful place? And along the way we'll see if we can find the spot where that picture was taken. Right, I think I'm all set. So let's go walking the moors. Now then, as I make my way along this really slippery path, oh my goodness, you might be wondering why this walk was entitled the Sheep Wash. Well, I shall tell you. Everyone knows this area as the Sheep Wash. They always have. For all the time that my mum came here and all the time that I've come here, and everyone who lives around here knows it by that name. And the reason why is because of this rather unambiguous looking bridge. My goodness, this really is a surprisingly steep climb. I can't believe I've been walking this track for about 40 years. Wow. Where did the time go and when did I get so old? Now, as I've grown into an adult, I've started to hypothesize as to what had caused, this very sort of specific track that we're walking along. And I came up with this very sensible idea that it must have been erosion. To find out that thousands of years of use by men and women and cattle and sheep, it really does give the place an even more poignant atmosphere. Yeah, talk about memories. It's like being in a time warp. It's funny, isn't it, how destinations can do that to you, but I know this spot perfectly. It was about 1992 or 1993, and me and my two brothers and my dad came up here for a walk, and we stopped right here for a photo. I think my dad stood up on there, and me and my two brothers stood on the fence right where you guys are, and we had a photograph. I don't have the physical photo, I've got no idea where it is, but I can even remember the clothes we were wearing. It's spooky. It's funny, isn't it? How places, destinations can do that to you. Talk about memories. There's the woods that me and my brothers were always desperate to get to on my right hand side. Perfect for tree climbing and games of hide and seek and all sorts of adventures. But then on the left, there's the first of the many moors that we're going to discover. It's a landscape that's absolutely full of evidence of human occupation. There's field systems and ancient cairns and all sorts of wonderful things to find and explore. And I absolutely love it. Something very different about the landscape here to the Yorkshire Dales. It's much more rugged. Feels a bit more butch. I know that might sound silly, but I think because I spent so much time here as a child, I really do feel at home. Right, this is it, folks. That there is the right turn that every time we've ever walked here, we've taken. The famous route taught to me by my mum, first walked by my gran and grandpa. We have left it behind. This now is all new. We're breaking new ground. So I'm going to go from not needing to look at my Ordnance Survey map to needing to give it a very close look. But this is going to be fun. What shall we find? This is Solomon's Lane. And when I spotted it on the map, I don't know why, I instinctively thought there must be something interesting down there. So I started doing a bit of research. And I found that it led to something called Solomon's Temple. And I got very excited because to me, Solomon's Temple is screaming Jerusalem and the Knights Templar and all sorts of exciting, interesting things. So I started doing a bit of research. And let me tell you, if there was anything interesting at the end of that lane, we'd be going. But there's not. Because Solomon's Temple was actually built. I found a newspaper report from 1840 that was printed not long after it was built, and it was created by a man called Solomon Metcalfe in 1812. And basically he just got a load of stones and all sorts of lovely things, and he did try to recreate the temple, King Solomon's Temple from Jerusalem, but it was in a little bit of a smaller form. All that's left is just a couple of gateposts. They're not very exciting. Now, whilst my family's been walking here, crumbs, since 1953, yes, I've only been coming here for 40 years, but we've never come quite so far into what's known as Ousemotherly Moor. You can tell I'm not in my comfort zone because I've totally extended my walk without realising it. Whoops. I misread the map and took a slightly later right turn than I should have done, but who cares? It's too pretty today. It may be chilly, but it's keeping me at perfect temperature for keeping up a really nice pace. I've got quite interesting memories of Ousemotherly. It was all because of, it was a Christmas in 1984 or 1985. I'll have been about 9 or 10. And I got invited for my first ever sleepover. I lived at the time about 40 minutes drive south of here. And a friend of mine who went to school with me lived in Ousemotherly. So here I came, feeling all confident for my first sleepover. Arrived here. I've got to admit I was a little bit perturbed by the distance because when you're 9, 10 years old, 40 minutes in the car, you might as well be going to the moon. But I arrived and the family were really lovely. They actually lived in the vicarage in Ousemotherly. And everything's going great, and we're having a great time. And I remember they had an Advent candle that we burnt at tea time, and then off we went to bed. And suddenly I got rather homesick. Whoops. So homesick, in fact, that I made my friend's mum phone my mum. And I just remember begging my mum to come and pick me up, of which she agreed to. And a weekend stay ended up being a one-night stay. Well, it is rather treacherous. I'll try not to slip. This is a place called Rocky Plains, and it's really easy to see why, actually, because there's loads and loads of exposed rock and interesting sort of things going on in the ground and on ground level. That makes it perfect for the sport of motorcycle trials, and an international event was actually held right here in 2019. I've got to say, actually, motorcycling is never something that's ever really appealed to me. I'm much happier running or walking, although to be fair, I did mountain bike through these moors quite a lot about 20 years ago. But walking and running is my thing now. I feel much more connected to the countryside around me and can really take in the sounds and the wildlife as you walk through this stunning countryside. Now, I do love these. It's a lovely little footbridge, and it's actually crossing Codbeck itself. This is the river that flows straight out of the reservoir that is our destination today. We're climbing again, folks, as we leave Codbeck behind, and it's really interesting actually how many people get caught out by the whole Codbeck thing, because you'd think, wouldn't you, that cod, that would mean that there'd be cod in there, but of course cod's a saltwater fish and this is a freshwater river, so there's absolutely no chance of finding any cod in Codbeck. Now, we're actually making our way up to, and this is a steep climb again. Wow. Here's me thinking today would be a slightly easier walk than last time, but it most definitely isn't. We're going to leave the trails for a bit as we pick up Quarry Lane, and that's going to take us towards the woods that I know so well. Thankfully, after just a few hundred yards, we're off the road. That's actually called Quarry Road because it used to link all the quarries with the village of Ousemotherly itself. Because when the quarrying boom happened here in the Victorian era, the quarrymen needed somewhere to live. And that's really when Ousemotherly grew into the big village that it is now. And what a perfect spot for a youth hostel. I mean, it is idyllic, really. That actually used to be a mill, a linen mill. Ousemotherly used to be, for hundreds of years, it was famous across the country for handloom weaving. And when the Victorians arrived here in the 19th century with all their quarries, they decided it was time for a resurgence. So they built that mill, Codbeck Gill mill, and lots of others sprung up. And for 150 years, they did it. It boomed. But then 20th century arrived, foreign competition came in that was much cheaper, and unfortunately all the mills closed. But now, it's a gorgeous youth hostel that you can come and stay at. Now we're getting into territory I'm more familiar with. Back on solid ground. Well, I wish we were. The ground is extremely slippy. But before we get to those paths which I walked as a lad, which are a few hundred metres in that direction, there's a treat in store. Because according to the map, there's a ruined farmhouse round here. And I only wish that me and my brothers had found it all those years ago, because what better place to play hide and seek? Look. Now, it just so happened that in 1947, my mum and my gran and my grandpa moved from the far south of England, hundreds and hundreds of miles actually. It was a huge move for that time. You know, 1947, straight after the war, I mean, it must have been just massive for them. And they came here. And by 1953, they were well ensconced in the local community. And as my mum recalls, there was a flyer through the door, and it said that Codbeck Reservoir was going to be opened. And ever the adventurers, one Christmas in, which you can't remember exactly when, either 1953 or 1954, they came here for our first ever walk. So we're up on top of the dam head now. It's actually 80 feet up from Codbeck, from the stream that we walked across earlier in the walk. So to my left we've got this precipitous drop, but then to my right we've got the gorgeous calming waters. And we said at the start of the walk today that we were going to try and find the spot where my gran and grandpa were stood. And I have a little feeling it might just be just over here on this side of the lake. Now, it's pretty tricky to make out that picture because it's so old, but I've got a feeling it might just have been taken here because this is a really popular spot. It's really funny to think that what was a spur-of-the-moment trip out by my grandparents and my mum here in 1953 or 1954 has now led to the fourth generation of my family loving coming here for an adventure and for a walk. And I can think of no better place to finish our wonderful walk today. And what a walk it's been! This walk for me has been about retreading old ground, but also breaking new ground. And I think what it's shown to me categorically is Kevin and I have got unfinished business in the North York Moors. So yes, well, this is officially the end of my very first walking series. How would you like to join me in 2021 for 10 brand new walks? 5 in the Yorkshire Dales, but 5 here as we explore the North Yorkshire Moors. And the best part of all is you don't have to wait long for season 2 to begin, because the fun commences on the 22nd of January 2021. So all that's left for me to do is thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful winter walk, and I'll see you next month when we will once again be walking the moors.